Hello, aspirants. Welcome back to Believers IAS Academy. And as a part of the Prelims high yielding topic discussion, we are coming up with another video, which is once again with respect to the center state relations. And today we will be discussing with respect to the financial relations, the immunities, and the reform commissions that are very important from this particular chapter. So, without any further ado, let's begin. So, the first question: what are the constitutional provisions governing borrowing powers of the center and the state? We have been discussing the various dimensions in terms of the relationship between the center and the state. And with respect to the financial relations, we have to see what is the borrowing capacity or what are the borrowing powers of the state with respect to center and vice versa. So, what are the relevant articles now? So, Article 292 to 293, very important articles, two articles. So, Article 292 talks about the union, where the union can borrow upon the security of the Consolidated Fund of India, and also it can even give guarantees within the limits fixed by the Parliament. Guarantees may be for the state government to their loans as well. And no constitutional ceiling is specified, with respect to how much it can borrow. However, we have certain acts, like for example, FRBM, which talks about the fiscal consolidation of the government. So, of course, all of those things are there. But also, this mostly talks about the borrowing as per the constitution, where there is no ceiling. So also another important point is they may borrow domestically or externally as well. So these 2 points are very important. So they can borrow both domestically and also externally with respect to the union. Now coming to the state, the Article 293, we have to keep in mind that the state can borrow within India only and upon the security of the consolidated fund of the state, not the India. Very important. And cannot borrow abroad directly. However, another instances you have to keep in mind that if the state is indebted to the center, which means if the state already has some loans which it needs to pay to the center, then it cannot raise further loans without the center's consent. Very important. And Parliament may impose conditions on such consent, which means Parliament has the power, it is not the state legislature. And then the center can give loans or guarantees to the states as well. So, next question: can a state borrow from abroad? Can it raise loans without center's consent? The answer is no. It cannot borrow any foreign sources directly. Rather, external borrowing is exclusively a union's domains, right? Because it is a part of the union list under entry 37. Only the center is entitled to even issue your external commercial bonds and all of that. So, however, state cannot directly borrow from the foreign agencies or the foreign sources. And if a state owes outstanding loans to center, it must obtain prior consent before raising new loans. We already discussed in Article 293. And in practice, most states require sentence clearance via RBI's oversight, because most of the states anyhow will have some liability towards the center, and they definitely would have taken loan from the center. So for almost all the new loans that the state has to raise, it needs that clearance certificate given by the RBI with respect to any new loans that the state wants to put forth. Third question: how are loans or guarantees given by center to states treated constitutionally? So the question is talking in terms of how these loans or guarantees treated constitutionally. First and foremost thing, the loans are charged upon the Consolidated Fund of India, and the guarantees, however, they create contingent liability on the center. Very important, because now the center is giving the guarantee on the state loans, and if the state is defaulting or if the state defaults, then the liability is directly on the center. However, this is governed by Articles 292 and 293, which we already discussed, and it is managed under the Fiscal Responsibility Framework, or simply the FRBM Act. Next question: what are the constitutional provisions regarding tax immunities between center and state? Very important. Two articles, 285 and 289. So here it says property of union is exempt from state taxation, and there's an exception as well, where Parliament may provide otherwise. Means Parliament can also create an exception for the first provision, which talks about the property of union, which can be exempted from the state taxation. And Article 289, on the other hand, it talks about the property and income of state, which is exempted from the union taxation. And here also we have an exception where union can tax commercial activities of state, provided it does not have an inclination towards the sovereign functions of the state, right? So that is also one of the important things. And what is the note? Immunity applies only to the sovereign functions and not the trading business. So if the state is conducting any trading businesses, those things can be taxed by the center. However, the immunity is applied only to those functions or those activities which is inclined towards the sovereign functions of the government of the state. Next question. Can center tax commercial operations of a state? Can it levy customs or excise on states as well? The answer is simply yes. Under Article 289, subclause 2, the union or the central government can take tax states' commercial activities, and of course, custom duty and excise duty also apply if state engages in trade and production, and sovereign functions remain immune. However, if any of the activities is with respect to the government activity, those things stay immune, or those things are exempted from these taxes, but rather, however, the custom duty and the union tax for states' commercial activities is definitely taxed. So thus, commercial parity is maintained. Sixth question, are properties and income of the local authorities, right, local authorities, exempt from central taxation? The answer is obviously a no, because no blanket constitutional immunity has been provided for the protection of local authorities from exempting them from the central taxation. However, Parliament may grant these exemptions via some statutes, and local bodies are not sovereign entities like states, so that is also included for your taxation, right? So next question, what is the effect of national emergency on center-state financial relations? Very important. National emergency under Article 352. What happens? The center becomes absolutely powerful. So the president may alter distribution of revenues between center and state. However, the executive functions completely gets disrupted. So center becomes super powerful and it assumes all the executive functions of the state as well, right? And in the very similar instance, the president can also alter the distribution of revenues between center and state. And such order remains in force during the emergency and until the end of the financial year in which the emergency ceases. Means it is coterminous with respect to the national emergency. Means these orders which is being given by the president remains in force during the emergency period and until the end of the financial year. So after the end of the financial year, maybe a fresh proclamation has to be given, or fresh order must be given by the president in order to continue the continues such orders with respect to limiting the financial relations of the state with respect to the center. So this is to strengthen the fiscal centralization temporarily. Eighth question, what happens during financial emergency? So which is the Article 360. You have to keep in mind, so far no financial emergency has been, implemented, or let's say no financial emergency has occurred in India so far. So Article 360 talks about financial emergency, and if financial emergency is declared, there are four important aspects you have to keep in mind. First thing is, center may direct states to observe financial propriety, and reduction of salaries of state officials. You can see that the reduction for all the government employees of the state, be it teachers or let's say police personnel, right? The state salary, I mean the salaries of these employees who are part of the state governments can drastically reduce, and reduction of salaries of judges also is definitely possible, including the Supreme Court and the High Court judges. And money bills of state may be reserved for president's consideration. Very, very important point. So this is one of the instance where money bill, it will be reserved for the president directly to, for the consideration, to make sure that the state is with respect to the fiscal requirement of the center or the nation as a whole, right? So you have to keep in mind the financial emergency has never been declared in India so far. Ninth question, what major issues have caused tensions in center-state relations post-independence? There are a list of important events. First is the misuse of Article 356 President Rule. This has been like one final or let's say one Brahmastra with the central government, that if any state is not in compliance with the central government's central government's rules or regulations, or if it is not following any constitutional precedents, then ultimately President Rule can be imposed. So a lot of misuse has also been happened with respect to this President Rule. Second is the fiscal imbalance with respect to the vertical and horizontal devolution of taxes, where we have already seen that numerous news and events have come across stating that there has been a partiality with respect to the North Indian states as compared to the South Indian states, where the center gives more revenue, or let's say more grants to the North Indian states, and gives very less to the South Indian states. And in the contrary, when the South Indian states are actually giving more, the contribution to the national exchequer from the South Indian states are very high on the contrary, and as compared to the North Indian states. However, when it comes to the devolution, the vertical devolution from the center to the states, the North Indian states are favored more as one of the biggest contemplating issue. And next is with respect to the role of governors in terms of reserving the bill. And this has been a very important news with respect to Tamil Nadu, and that we have already discussed a number of times. Next is deployment of central forces. We have the AFSPA, which is very important to keep in mind, right? And what is happening in Northeast, the insurgencies and everything, right? How these people are handling the situations, right? All of these things are also very important. Next is the centrally sponsored schemes proliferation, GST compensation disputes even till date, and all India services control. Like, is it the under the full control of the center, or is it the state? And these things are like constantly happening. And with respect to rivers, of course, the river water disputes. See, basically, these reflect the structural central tilt in Indian federalism, where we can see that it is pretty much like having a unitary bias rather than having a federal bias, right? Next question. What are the key recommendations of major commissions on center-state relations? First is with respect to the administrative reforms. It was the first administrative reforms commission, which was established in 1966, and the chairman was Morarji Desai. Very important, and there were few key important things with respect to this commission. First is this was established to strengthen the interstate council and to limit the misuse of Article 356, which is the precedent rule. And next is to improve the center-state consultation or center-state relationship. Next is the Rajmannar Committee, appointed by the Tamil Nadu DMK government. And what were the recommendations? So it recommended the transfer of more subjects to state lists, give state lists a huge number of opportunities to make their own laws on certain vital subjects. And then abolition of all India services, curtailing Article 356, and greater fiscal autonomy. Of course, all extreme recommendations, which most of it did not happen. And next is Anandpur Sahib Resolution 1973, adopted by Shiromani Akali Dal. And what were the demands? Center limited to defense, foreign affairs, and communication, and greater autonomy to states. Of course, even that also we have seen that it is not pretty much implemented. And then Sarkaria Commission in 1983, very, very important with respect to center-state relationships. Who is the chairman? R.S. Sarkaria, and hence the name Sarkaria Commission. And what were the major recommendations? Article 356 as a last resort and not the first instance. And then governor should be non-partisan outsider, right? And it is to strengthen to interstate council and also to consult states before legislation on concurrent list, which more or less doesn't happen. Financial devolution through finance commission. And last is the Punchi Commission. This is also very important. Recent commission in 2007. Chairman is M.M. Punchi. And key recommendations were to fix the tenure of governors. Localized emergency, which is the district level emergency provision, must also be there, because now just because one of the districts, or let's say one of the small portions within a state, if they are like, let's say, not in compliance with the constitutional machinery or not following the orders of the center, doesn't mean that the entire state should be put under the precedent rule, which will definitely affect the entire state administration and the state economy, right? So a localized emergency, which is more of a practical solution, is what was recommended by Punchi Commission. Very important. Next is clear guidelines on centers deployment of forces, and with respect to separation of investigative agency from political control and the fiscal discipline framework. So do let me know in the comment section as to which commission has been actually and actively implemented. However, all these commissions, the recommendations with respect to Sarkaria Commission and the Punchi Commissions are very, very important. However, the names of the other important committees, if we just know that these committees are a part of center-state relationships, that would suffice. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a fantastic day and all the best for your upcoming prelims.